Shalom and welcome to Frenemies, where Israeli foreign affairs and other issues are being looked into in depth by both sides of political spectrum. With me representing the left is former Meretz MK Avshalom Vilan. Hi.
Hi, good evening.
I am Ziv Maor, editor of Mida commentary website, and let's begin. First topic on our agenda is an amendment to the basic law of Israeli government, shifting the authority to declare war from the entire government to the cabinet. Abu, the left is quite troubled by this rather technical change. Why is that?
It's not just a technical change, it's a very important one. Because, you know, I changed what we call the reserve basic law, which is part of the security law of the State of Israel, one of the basic and fundamental laws. Now, it took me about 7 years when I was a member of parliament, Knesset. But, you know, during the 50s, the 60s, till about 10, 8, 9 years ago, one man, the chief of staff of the Israeli military forces, by one order, by himself, can stop all the Israeli economy and take all men in Israel for
recruiting the reserves.
In duty to the reserve if there was some kind of emergency situation. And when we saw how it was easier to declare war or to change dramatically all the situation of the State of Israel without having a government meeting or cabinet meeting, without the permission of the Knesset, the Defense and the Foreign Affairs Committee. So we changed it also. And the idea was that according to law and to civil society, the people who are responsible for all these issues has to decide. It cannot be one-man show and not two-man show. So then it's the idea that the cabinet will declare a war. It's almost obvious. And I think what happened about a month ago, it was quite ridiculous, you know, because what I meant two men? People who are sitting in the Israeli system, like in the European one, responsibility is upon the shoulders of all members of government, all the ministers.
But the cabinet does not come from the sky, you know. It is appointed by the government. It does get the faith of the elected Knesset. And the reason for this amendment is a recommendation of a professional committee that sat down and said that the government as a whole does not have the flexibility needed to react to actions that happen from time to time when we are indeed in emergencies. This is why it is needed. Now, your voice is quite different than what I hear in Israeli left in general. The description that I get from the leftist biased media in Israel is that this amendment is about serving some kind of a need on behalf of Netanyahu to make all decisions, including the critical decisions such as declaring a war, all by himself. Well, this is not what the amendments said, but this is not your accusations toward Netanyahu. This is not what you believe in.
With all my respect to Mr. Netanyahu, there is no way that the Prime Minister by himself or with the Defense Minister can declare about war, because in the end of the game, responsibility is of all ministers. Now, I agree with you that the cabinet, and many times during a war, like in the second Lebanese war and before, even all the government was sitting for hours as cabinet, and they got the decision because it's very well known that no party will continue to be part of a coalition without understanding that in the most critical issues, they are not participants. There are no way. And furthermore, for good and for bad, and you know that, let's say that till 1973, the Israeli political picture regarding security issues was much more easier. After the Yom Kippur War, and the heavy price that we paid over there, people understood that war is something quite serious to live it, not just general, even just for politicians, and responsibility for good and for the success and for fall is very, very important.
Yes.
And that's the reason in democracy, I think that there's no other way.
Abu, let me say this. Well, when you look, for example, at the United States, where the elected president is the top commander, the chief commander of the entire military over there, when you see that and you see that this is, after all, not only a functioning democracy, but also a democracy that does not, go into war on behalf of everything and every hunch that the president has, he declares war eventually. Well, this could work. I mean, the critics towards the possibility of war, well, they've got no grounds whatsoever. No. Now, when you look at what happened in 2006, 12 years ago, in the Second Lebanese War, the problem was quite the opposite. All the people who had the authority, back then it was the entire government, before the last amendment of the specific law, have decided not to declare war. The war was retrospectively declared or defined as such. It was declared at first as an operation, and only after that it was redefined as a war, so that wounded soldiers could be compensated for the losses and for the injuries.
But it was for a total different reason. The main reason they declared in the beginning just an operation because they didn't want to pay the prices, because in the moment that you're declaring a full war, from an economic point of view, you have to pay everybody, and it's the cost of it, it's much higher than a regular operation. That was the reason when it continued about a month and a half, they understood there's no other way. But furthermore, to your serious question, America had a total different system. Everything goes to the president, and he is the chief commander of the military, etc. May I tell you a story, a very short one? In the Six-Day War, George Shultz was a professor, I think, in Chicago University, and he has an Israeli student. He made his PhD over there, and he went back to fight for the Six-Day War to Israel, and lost his life. And Schultz said later on, if a student, Israeli student, doing all the way from America to Israel to defend his country, meaning that there has to be something special and unique, that all their citizens believe that it belongs to them and they have to do to the best of ability to protect it. And that's the reason that I think that in Israel, there is no way that one man will decide. In the end, war, and I passed already 3 wars already, and believe me, it's something that you have to be 100% sure that the ministers, the leaders who are sending toward the war did to the best of their ability to prevent it, or it will run as smart as possible. Well, that's the reason that it's very important that all the democratic process will be strong, that people who are going to give their life will be, even there from different political views, they will definitely... You say that in the last week we saw that Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas, was hospitalized, and according to all kinds of resources, his physical position is not so well. He is 83 years old. And my question is, what do you think? Let's assume that Abbas will live for many years, but he cannot continue being in power. What do you think, from your perspective, going to open over there? And what is the meaning if somebody will replace Abbas for Israel and a political solution, if it's possible?
Well, first of all, I have no sympathy to the man whatsoever. He's an anti-Semite, he's a Holocaust denier. I do not wish to see anyone dying, but first of all, there is no sympathy on the table. As for the politics within the PA, well, there is currently no name whatsoever that is trustworthy enough or accepted enough. Now, one thing needs to be understood in terms of what's going on in the PA. Given that it is not a democracy, the question of who is worthy of becoming the leader is the question of who is getting the trust, not of the Palestinians themselves or the Palestinian citizens themselves, but of the world and of Israel. Eventually, it doesn't matter whatsoever what would the Palestinian citizens of Judea and Samaria and of Gaza will do. The person with which Israel and the United States, and to some extent Europe, will acknowledge is the person that represents what is left of the Palestinian Authority, this will be eventually the person in power, because the PA itself does not have any power whatsoever. It does not have an economy. It does not have a military. It's nothing. It's only power, indeed, it's propaganda power and diplomatic power, and the diplomatic huge operation that it conducts for the last few decades against Israel. Now, as long as Abu Mazen still got the trust for some reason from Europe and the States, he's got nothing left whatsoever within the Israeli government. But as long as he's still conceived as the Palestinian leader, well, he's still there. Once he's gone, I think our responsibility is to make sure and to declare that no one replaces him. It's time the time is right now to end the farce that is called the
meaning
Palestinian
that you
Authority.
want to take, that Israel will take responsibility of the West Bank and maybe later on Gaza. And we were on this story almost 40 years. And first of all, from economic point of view, it will cost you about 10 billion shekel at least, maybe more. Furthermore, I don't believe that in the current international situation, it's possible. By the way, Abu Mazen said all the time, you will see, we will collapse, we will hang up, and we will say, okay, take the responsibility. From Israeli perspective, I think that it will be a terrible mistake. I think that over there we'll find ourselves immediately in the not anymore in two-state solution, but just one binational state, meaning that we will be responsible for everything. We will not be democratic anymore, because we will not going to give them the right to vote to the Knesset, and without doing so, they will do two different of citizens in this one state. And in my opinion, the alternative is, I think it for many years, that, let's say, the first generation of the leader of the PLO, as it looked, were not ready to sign an agreement with Israel. I believe that the second generation could do so. I think that Marwan Barghouti, which was sentenced for life prison in Israeli jail, I believe that sooner or later, they will elect him as their president, as their leader. And I think that if he will have the courage to challenge Israel and to try, seriously speaking, to achieve an agreement based on the two-state solution.
So basically, Abu, what you're saying, that if the Palestinians elect a terrorist that has the bloods of dozens of Israelis on his personal hands, because of the amount of terror attacks that he's been involved with. Let me finish.
I have blood on my hands. I don't know if to have.
Yes,
everybody
you was fighting in just wars.
I was not a terrorist. I'm
talking about the blood of women and children. So if this is the person eventually the Palestinians for some reason elect, this is the person that that Israel should negotiate with. Come on, we have a problem here.
Don't be ridiculous. In all the world, many political leaders were terrorists, and they, when become political, they change their policy. Look, we say that we are morally true, but look from their perspective, from their point of view. If you are standing for
from the anti-Semitic point of view, for them anti-Semitic, declaring a policy of Judenrein in the entire state, in the entire land of Israel, between the sea to the river, this is the point of view that I should look into.
This is not the issue now. I have an answer, but leave it. What I'm saying, that sometimes we bomb them from an airplane whatsoever, and citizens are killed, and so from their point of view, that's not morally the same feeling that we have. They're doing the terrible terrorist activity, and we have to fight against it, no doubt. So it depends who's looking.
What you're proclaiming is such a moral low standing point, because the acknowledgement that people who defend themselves with the presence of citizens and then claim that the IDF is killing citizens, and on the other hand target Israeli civilians with terror attacks, we are not in anywhere near them morally.
You convince me that we are moral and they are not.
Way more.
Okay, but what is in the end
the thing is, they're immoral.
The question is,
Abu, they're immoral not only with their means. One of the aftermath of last week's riots in the Gaza border is demonstrations of many prominent Arab-Israeli leaders that choose to support Hamas claims. Abu, isn't such outright support of terrorist actions, of terrorist organizations, cross the lines of legitimate free speech?
I don't think so. I think that, let's say, I don't like it, but I think that they have the right to protest. And I think that, as Voltaire said once, I disagree with everything that you're saying, but I'll fight to the best of my ability that you will allow to say it. This is democracy. Now, if it's against the law, then protest that it's without a permission from the police whatsoever. So police had the right to use even force. But what happened over there, it's according to all what I read in the newspaper and I saw in the media, it's totally different. I think that instead of being smart, the police forces used too much forces. And instead, there was another demonstration with 300, 200, 400 people, and after 1 and 2 hours was finished, we got a scandal that we looked not like a democracy, but like a state that the policemen of there taking responsibility.
Do you know what you're doing now? You're buying or even promoting their false propaganda, and I'll explain. Well, it's fine to have and to accommodate.
What happened in the Negev 6 months ago? People said that it was propaganda,
yes.
And now, after all the investigation, it showed that an innocent person was shot to death for nothing.
Well,
believe me, I know the people, I know,
it's
and
not
you
about
saw
the
that
people,
many times.
it's about the
many
concept.
times I protect the Israeli police forces.
Yes.
I think that in this case,
all
smart
that it takes,
was the name of the wasn't the game. The name
all
of the
that
game
it takes, all that it takes. And by the way, this is the same thing that happens in Virginia about 8 months ago in the United States. All that it takes to make a peaceful demonstration, a peaceful, legitimate demonstration, not by its content, but by its essence. All that it takes to turn it into a legal riot is for one person to commit violence towards an officer. This enforces the officer to react. Now, it is not an Israeli interest, I agree with you about that, to turn those demonstrations into riots and to show the world pictures of Israeli officers beating Arab protesters. There is no
in Haifa, in the middle of Israel.
Yes, I'm talking about Haifa. Yes, there is no dispute between us on this topic. But one must understand that these people are there to get these pictures because without this violence, it is their interest to be beaten. And that's the way it is.
So why do you are playing according to your bill? Why we are playing to their hands?
Well, what would you do? How would you react for a beaten police officer?
I want to ask you a small question, short one. Try once to get into their mind. You know, there was, during the 60s, a very interesting Israeli Arab leader named Abdul Aziz Zoabi. He was the Deputy Minister of Health. And he said, our problem is that our state is with a terrible conflict with our nation. And that's correct, meaning that after what happened in Gaza, and I think that in the end of the day, Israel has no other alternative but to protect itself. We cannot allow that they will cross the border and doing all this brouhaha. Okay, but having said that, you have to understand that Israeli-Palestinian, from their point of view, it's quite difficult to see it.
Well,
so I believe that in democracy they can protest and they can say whatever they want. We have to be comfortable and strong enough to allow them to do so. And I think by this understanding, the whole situation was different. The moment that the police, in any kind of political demonstration, using force, such a heavy force immediately, it's a mistake by definition. It's a mistake.
None of us were there, but let's talk for a moment about the merits, about the message of those demonstrations. Look, I consider myself a free speech radical. I'm against, for example, the articles in the Israeli criminal code that are against incitement. I hate incitement, but I think it should be legal because limiting it basically limits free speech. But when it comes to the Palestinian message, to the Palestinian agenda and ideology, well, I think that this is by essence, and regardless of how violent was the carrier of this message, the SNG itself should be legalized in Israel, because Palestinianism is nothing but anti-Semitism. Palestinianism is saying that there should not be any Jews in this state, just as there are no Jews in any Arab state east to Jordan River, there should be no Jews whatsoever here. And this is something that the state of Israel, being a democracy, being a state that believes in free speech, should not accommodate. People who call for not only the demolition of the country, but also for massacre and ethnic cleansing of the people themselves should not get the right for free speech, and this is what Palestinianism is all about.
Democracy cannot be divided. In the moment that says they are allowed or not allowed, there is no democratic life anymore. And you have to try to get, I tell you again, into their mind and to understand their perspective. Most of them really want to be Israelis by all means. Talk to them. They have their national entity and their national aspiration. That's correct. But generally speaking, I think that most of them want to really to be Israelis. Why? Because we are a liberal society, we are open society, etc. But you have to understand that their feeling, they are always second priority. The good thing that Miri Regev succeeded yesterday to move the football game between Argentina and Israel from Haifa to Jerusalem. And although the Sami Ofer Stadium in Haifa is much, much better than in Jerusalem, meaning that Messi, instead to give us 4 or 5 beats, will give maybe just 1. So although it was Miri Regev, which I don't disagree with her, maybe once, but I didn't understand even, made a good thing.
Well, as for my positive note, I've just been informed that Ezra Nawi, who is a proxy activist of the New Israel Fund, is going to be indicted, probably with assistant to homicide. Now, the reason for which is because he reported on a Palestinian citizen for selling his property to a Jew, which is a capital felony in the Palestinian Authority. And if indeed this person was executed in the PA, now he is going to be, for the first time in such case, indicted for such a felony, probably for assisted homicide. Now, the reason for which is important, because for many, many years, as an Israeli conservative, felt that the GA had an agenda that distinguishes between rightist felons and leftist felons. This is the first time that an extreme leftist activist is going to face fair judgment, and this is good news.
Thank you very much, Ziv, and thank you to the audience who will listen to us.
Well, thank you, and we'll see you next week.